Welcome to this new version of the podcast in English. So as I said last week, basically what's going to happen now is the dialogues are still there. So in a few seconds, you will be able to hear the dialogue with Torgrim Halvari, who's a Norwegian photographer I met in Iceland. In case you want to navigate on the timeline, it's going to last 13 minutes and 41 seconds. So if you want to forward then to the second part of the podcast. But this first part, basically, I'm just explaining this. Just to let you know, also, there's a French version of the podcast for those who speak French or understand French, which is with Charlotte Abe in the dialogues. So catch you after this dialogue. It's my pleasure today to have Torgrim Halvari for the dialogue about photography. I met Torgrim when we were in Iceland together for a photo workshop. Beautiful sceneries, fantastic country, great people. Super enjoyable time together talking about photography, but also seeing you work and take pictures and discover your sensibility in terms of photography. And
Thank you.
I'll directly go to the main question. Why photography for you? Why did you start taking pictures? Or did photography come to you? How did it happen?
Well, I got my first camera, I guess, when I was 13 or 14 years old, and it was a Polaroid. And I remember I bought it, and I thought it was a bit complicated to buy these films and so on. So I swapped it into this small Kodak Instamatic. Imagine you had a Polaroid and you swapped it to a Kodak Instamatic. So it was totally stupid at that time. But then I started to have a feeling of photography as something interesting, because you document something, you catch a moment, and you can watch it after a while. And then for many years, I just took photos at parties and so on, until in the 90s, I think, early 90s, I started to do some journalism, and I did some reviews of concerts and so on. And I started to take more and more photos. So since then, I've been, almost each day taking some photos.
When you talk about taking pictures, do you think about keeping a memory of something, or are you trying to reveal the underlying poetry or the underlying culture behind the scenes that you see in real?
I think more and more I'm thinking about it as poetic memories. I think about what I'm seeing, I would like somebody else to see. And through my photos, you can start to think, what is this? Who is this person? What is happening here? And so on. So it started probably most as a documentary thing. And then more and more, I'm gliding into this between documentary and art photography, I feel. It's a very complicated, very complicated settings, because, until a few years ago, documentary photography was not seen as art. But now you can see documentary photography in some art galleries. We have even some Norwegian documentary photographers who never uses the photos for anything else than exhibition. No newspapers, no nothing like that, but pure documentary as an exhibition, and that's interesting.
How do you relate to the photographs that you not steal, but that you capture when you're somewhere and you suddenly feel that urge or need to memorize the time?
I'm not that good at remembering. There's some people who are remembering everything, like what they had for dinner in 1972. But I'm not that person. I have a not that good memory, but when I look at the photos I took in the 80s or the 90s, I'm back in the situation. And I'm starting to think, who was that person? What happened here? And so on and so on. And I think that's also a part of what I'm doing today. I'm trying to not only remind myself about what happened, but also get other people to think what is happening here. As I say, You know, you can document the person. You can just take a photo of a person, and that's okay. I have taken a photo of the prime minister. But if you start to interview the prime minister and you talk with the prime minister and so on, and you understand what's behind what he's doing, and you learn something about his life, then you can, when you start shooting, you can remind him about that, and he goes back in some kind of his face or her face are going back to the same position as when you are asked about, tell me about your father. You lost your father when you were quite young, and so on and so on. And then you're not just documenting, you are making something that people ask, who is this guy? Or what is he thinking about? Okay, this is the prime minister, but he looks like he's, you know, and that could be any farmer, a prime minister, whoever, but that communication you have with the person first, I think is very important. Or when you know something about that person, that you can try to get into the feeling the person have. Or it's very difficult to explain, but I often see, when I look at photos, I see when somebody has been talking to the person. I know something about them.
When you do your work, you try to explicit the human side of things. I was thinking about your documentation of the cultures of the North, thinking about your
the
region
Sami
of,
people.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you see it also in that way?
Well, this project ended up as a book. This First Nation, the Sami people in North Norway, they have these costumes, or whatever you call it, national suits, and they are very beautiful, and every district has its own. So I could just have lined up a lot of people taking photos of them in this national costume and sold this as an exotic thing. But this project was more based on that I've been, as you say, worked abroad for many years, and I've been working in many conflict areas where some of the struggles has been between different ethnic groups and different cultures and so on and so on. And when I then returned back to Norway and saw that this Sami people, the First Nation, which I also belong to, still there are this joke about them, and you know, it's still a discrimination ongoing and so on and so on. I was more interested in showing that they are a part of us and we are a part of them. I wanted everything to be so much as possible on their premises. So I said, I'm going to ask you some questions, but you answer exactly what you want. And I'm going to take a photo. And if you want to have your national dress, you have it. If you just want to have whatever you use when you work, you have that. So it's all up to you. And where you want to be taken photo of is also up to you. And that was because I wanted to be as pure as possible. I don't want to exotify, if that's the right word, these persons, but showing them as they are. And I asked them some different questions. And what is your identity? A lot of people don't think about their identity. So many of them was like surprised and said, my identity? Well, that's complicated. And others just say, well, my identity is here. It's in the heart. My Sami identity is here. I try to get it as pure as possible.
Definitely in your process, you try to get in touch with the heart of the people you take pictures of.
Yes.
And you talked about going somewhere in your process, going from documentary to a more artistic approach to photography. Do you think this artistic approach makes it more potent for you to get in touch with the reality of the humans you take pictures of?
Yeah, in a way, because I think there are, I know photographers who are photographers, but they don't have soul. They maybe know a lot about their cameras and how the lenses work and so on. But then when they use it, I'm in this group with Analog Geeks, Scandinavia. And there are many geeks, they collect cameras and they are very happy with that. But there are very few of them who are actually good photographers, because they are so focused on the equipment, and they just take a photo to see that, oh, there's a lot of shadows, but this lens works very good in the highlights and so on and so on. You could do the opposite. I give you, pardon my friends, I don't care about what camera I have. I have a lot of cameras also. I collect cameras, but I know this camera will give me this and this tonality. It will be unsharp. This lens is giving me this and this. Then in my head, I know what the photo will be. So I composed it out from what type of film or what will happen when I develop this, or whatever I do with a digital camera. you have those who just take photos, registrate, and those who are actually using it for art, trying to make somebody think and see the same as they do, or see something. Well, when I started to, I usually tell this story when people ask me if I call myself photographer. I say, yes, now I'm calling myself photographer. But I didn't call myself a journalist before many years after I started to write for newspapers and so on, because it's a title that hangs very high. Photographer, artist, journalist, and all this. I didn't call myself a photographer before I was at a party in Sweden, in Stockholm, and then this famous Swedish photographer, who at some point had seen my photos, he just said, very nice photos you take. You're a very good photographer. And then I felt that, okay, if he accepts me as a photographer, I would call myself a photographer. And that's because I have respect for photography and for the art that photography is. It's not just to take a camera. And it took me years. It was like in the beginning, I had some photo books, but I stored them away. And I think it was like 2, 3, 4 years. I didn't buy a single photo book or open a single photo book, because I would like to try to find something out of my own. And of course you should be inspired, and you look at other photographers and so on. So, and you can't avoid it in the society today, but I try to isolate me a bit from other photographers, just to see that whatever I have learned, how can I use it and have an own personal type of photography.
I'm thinking about you taking pictures with your small Olympus camera, film camera. You told me that you had some films you still didn't develop. Are they part of the magic of experimenting with reality?
It's interesting because I don't quite know myself. I think it started just because I didn't have the time to develop these films. And then I just put them in a bag. And then after a while, when it was like 20, 30 films, I was thinking, maybe I just don't develop them yet. Because I always have a small 35 camera with me. It can be everything from a Lomo to a Leica. I take picture of whatever I see. And when I'm at parties, I have this plastic party camera. I just take photos with a terrible flash and so on. And I put it in this bag. And the thought is that at some point I start to pick out one film and develop it and think, what was this? When this happened? As a kind of contra to using the mobile phone, and in 2 minutes you are on Instagram. And then I can start to scan these photos, start to work with contrast and see, will I use them for some project? Will I, mix them with something else? I don't need them exactly now. I just have them there like a small treasure. And I get more and more excited by this big bag. I was thinking, soon I have to buy a new bag to put them in the fridge, because this bag is full now. I'm waiting, and sometimes I just put out one film and I look at it and develop it, and it's a small treasure.
It's kind of a philosophical approach to photography, but more importantly to life. Do you have a project right now? I know you organize exhibitions, you work on publications, you have your photo work also. Is there something new coming up, or something that really you found really exciting in terms of photography?
Yeah, I always have a couple of projects ongoing. And now I'm trying to do, one of them is architecture in an old library in Oslo. I'm also trying to document another subculture in Norway. And the largest project, which I hope to start soon, is photography of Norwegian veterans, war veterans.
I guess you'll be posting sometimes a few documents on your Instagram or your website for people to see.
Yeah, I'm a bit lazy there, but I will try to be better. And
I can't wait to see more of your work, of course, and hopefully catch you in real life very soon.
Yeah, thanks to meet you again.
Yeah, thanks for the dialogue, and catch you soon.
Thank you. Thank you the same. Bye.
Now to this second part of the podcast. As I said before, there's a project that I'm going to start, photo project, linked to experimental narration and photography, of course, that I decided to start last week. And I was like, oh, why did I propose this? It's something extra on my already hard to manage time schedule. and I have limited ideas also for my usual project. So why would I add an extra one? But actually, I think the mechanism, the procedure is interesting. And so I've been thinking about it last week. What will be this project? And because it's about inspiration, how you create your inspiration, how you create a narration, a story. My idea actually is to make it a story. So inspiration is going to be the thematic. And last week, while taking pictures back and forth, I took a picture of a sunset. I was expecting it to be in focus, and I actually messed it up. I don't really know why, but the result was super interesting. I actually really liked it. I think the evocation was really actually stronger than the other pictures I took, which were in focus. So I think I'm going to use this as the starting point for this this new project, this project that's linked to the podcast. We'll see where it goes. So basically, I'll put a link in the description to the photo. I published it on my Instagram, and I think it's a good representation of inspiration. It's kind of there. It's nice. It's a bit blurry, and I'm going to try to build something around this. So every week, this time it's a little short, but every week I'll be trying to build around this picture and the ones to come. Maybe it will disappear. Who knows? But that might be interesting. And don't hesitate to again post your comments. You can now also record vocal comments through the Spotify podcasts platform. So don't hesitate. I might integrate you in the next podcast. And yeah, that was the first part. This project I decided to build around the podcast. Otherwise, last week I talked about Foam having this talent search, the talent call, looking for new talents, and they had an age limit, which felt a bit weird to me, at least. So, beyond the fact that they answered me on Instagram, I wanted to have someone to talk to, and so I requested if they had someone that could maybe discuss why they have this age limit a little bit more in details. I didn't have any answer yet, so hopefully we'll get one in the future. I'll continue following this. And finally, maybe one extra subject I found interesting and you might want to react is the integration of AI. It's not super news. People have been using it for a while. You find lots of podcasts, and people talking about it on YouTube, for example. It's AI, the integration of AI in Photoshop, in Adobe Photoshop. I've been trying it a lot. It's interesting. You can really, it's a bit like working with DALL-E or Midjourney, but inside your workflow and inside your canvas, with layers, with versions, you can really edit. So that might be a parade to when we're saying all those old tools might not be able to resist the advent of artificial intelligence. That might be a great way. So I've been trying it a lot, but one thing that I think would be interesting to debate is the curation. It's as for Midjourney and DALL-E, so it's a beta version you can have if you're already using Adobe products. You can download it and test it. I'm not sure you can do it freely. Maybe you can with a trial version. Not sure. Might want to check. But otherwise, for those who already use their tools, it's an interesting way to test. And talking about the curation, I felt it was quite weird to have the same kind of limitations. For example, on nudity. For those who do nude photography, for example, actually the AI tool doesn't let you enter the words it decides are not to be used. So is that a temporary thing with the beta version? How can we expect to continue using in tools where there's actually a curation on how you use your creative tool, the one which is supposed to let you edit your photos? So I felt a little bit, it felt a bit strange to be kind of overlooked by the company I'm paying to be able to edit my images. Even so, it's just to create some details on my photos. I would be interested to have your opinion, so don't hesitate to leave those voice messages through the Spotify platform where the podcast is hosted. The links are below. or simply send me messages through Instagram. That's an easy way also to react. I'd be curious to have your comments, your suggestions if you've been using it, or other ideas or news if you do. So a little small second part today. A little bit. I'm going a little bit in every direction, but I guess that's how it goes when you try new things like this podcast. And yeah, hopefully that was entertaining a little bit, and looking forward to catch you next week.